you should be playing Elden Ring PvP. If you've never touched it or only dabbled, this video is for you, and hopefully I can show you why PvP opens up an entire new world of Elden Ring that you simply can't get through PvE. We all know how popular Elden Ring was in its first weeks, with everyone experiencing the lands between for the very first time, finding secrets, slaying bosses, and taking their sweet time becoming Elden Lord. However, it's a simple fact that many players finish their first playthrough, watch the credits roll, and won't touch the game again until DLC. If you're like me, you thoroughly enjoyed your first playthrough, but once you killed Elden Beast, you thought to yourself, I can finally get into PvP. If you agree with that statement, you're honestly in the small minority. It pains me how often I'll be watching a Twitch stream of speedrunning or something, and someone will ask in chat if PvP is any good, and the streamer will basically just tell them what they've heard, which is that it's unbalanced and therefore not good. I'm not saying FromSoft doesn't need to make changes, but what I am saying is that PvP is 100% worth trying and a massive amount of fun. For a quick TLDR of what I'll go over, here's the rundown. The number one reason, of course, you should play Elden Ring PvP because it's fun. The barrier to entry isn't nearly as big as some people think. PvP gameplay and build making opens up a whole new world of Elden Ring that can give you even more hours of enjoyment than your PvE playthroughs. The community and the way the meta evolves is a great thing to be a part of. The netcode, while not amazing, is still perfectly playable most of the time. I'll make something clear early on, and that's that I will essentially be disregarding invasions for most of the video. All too many people think that it's the only form of PvP in Elden Ring, and plenty of people may have negative experiences with it and simply write off PvP entirely. Even for me, I don't really like invading all that much. The form of PvP that you should be playing if you're an Elden Ring enjoyer is duels. How do you participate in a duel? Well, all you have to do is grab the duelist's furled finger from the Colosseum in Limgrave and place it down at the main Academy Gate site of Grace in Liurnia. After no time at all, you will be summoned to another player's world, usually both players will bow, and the fight will begin. Alternatively, you can use a furl-calling finger and summon a red player of your own. It's not an invasion, there's no gank squad or unsuspecting newbies, it's a 1v1 and that's it. Duels are a great way to test out new things, since there's essentially no detriment to losing. Unlike invasions, there are a few bits of etiquette to keep in mind, the main one being that Crimson Flasks are not allowed. Going toe-to-toe with someone that has a dedicated PvP build is quite a different experience, and it makes it all the more satisfying to push your build to its limits and outplay your opponent. You might think that there's too big a barrier to playing PvP. If you've played a lot of PvE and ended up at level 200 something, it could be a little disheartening to hear about the level 125 or even 150 meta. You do not need to put in another 100 hours to get a PvP character going. People are willing to help, and they're willing to trade. Get someone to drop you runes, and fly through a somber smithing stone route at level 125. You'll need to collect some key items that can't be dropped, of course, but for the most part, players in the Patches Emporium Reddit and the PvP Discord are a huge help. In fact, if you're on Xbox and need some help making a 125 PvP build, send me a message and I'll be happy to jumpstart you with a stack of Lord runes. Once you have a base PvP build set up, that's where the fun begins. There is such a crazy amount of depth that can go into a PvP build, I can spend hours just theory crafting and experimenting before settling on something that I like. There's a whole lot of negative takes out there when it comes to PvP. You've probably heard something along the lines of, PvP is nothing but rivers of blood and Moonveil. And that's just not true whatsoever. There are plenty of people like me who go out of their way to make builds that are a little bit out of the ordinary, but even fighting the more refined and powerful setups can be a bunch of fun too. Not only do random duels have plenty of variety despite the skewed balance of the game, but if you truly can't handle the occasional encounter with this guy, the PvP Discord has an extensive ban list that takes game balance and puts it in the hands of the players, where builds like this are simply not allowed. The Discord is an awesome place for casual and ranked matches, great advice for build making, and even tools to assist you with stat allocations. Earlier I said that PvP opens up a whole new world of Elden Ring gameplay, and that couldn't be more true. There are builds and weapons that are perfectly viable in PvP that are awful PvE setups, and vice versa, with plenty of boss slaying builds being horrendous in duels. It's a whole new Elden Ring adventure that plenty of people who adore the combat system are just missing out on. It's not just the weapons and builds that work out completely differently, but playstyles too, which leads into a notable point. There is no such thing as a mix-up in PvE. As good as the AI is in this game, there's still no such thing as a true mix-up. When I say mix-up, I'm basically referring to a combo that takes the enemy off guard. For an example of a simple mix-up, I have a Storm Stomp Lance in my main hand and an offhand thrusting sword. Stomp gets you 1 guaranteed hit, so obviously the Lance is the weapon to use since it does more damage, right? Sometimes that's true, but other times you can opt for the thrusting sword and chain it directly into a Lance strike to catch a panic roll. Panic rolling is when you roll not on reaction to an attack, but instead when you're anticipating an attack. Exploiting panic rolls is a huge part of dueling, and something that is essentially a complete non-factor in PvE. Some mix-ups are even easier than that, like with a Colossal Sword, simply either using a crouch attack or a sprinting attack while the opponent is on the defensive. If they're expecting the fast crouch attack and dodge accordingly, they'll be caught by the normal R1. The point I'm trying to make here is that in PvE, the one thing that matters is DPS, DPS, DPS. There's more nuance to it in speedrunning and no-hit of course, but in general, it's raw damage output that makes something good. In PvP, there are so many new game mechanics to discover, skills to learn, and items to put to use. Understanding the poise system is another thing that you can essentially ignore in a normal playthrough, but in a duel, knowing what will and won't stagger you is hugely beneficial. If you have 61 poise, then you'll be able to avoid stagger against a hit from power stance straight swords, since they deal 60 poise damage on an L1. If you have 93 poise, you'll be able to swing right through someone hitting you with a one-handed halberd. Knowing these little things can give you a substantial edge in a duel, but it's still just a small boost towards the high skill ceiling that Elden Ring dueling boasts. If you're wondering how to learn about stuff like that, seriously, the PvP Discord has it all. To further separate these two worlds of Elden Ring, Ashes of War and weapons that may be underwhelming against bosses might be incredible in PvP. There's some carryover of course, with some weapons being incredible in both, but it might not even be for the same reason. Flaming Strike has great damage in PvE, but what makes it amazing in a duel is its mix-up potential. Floating between L2 and R2, and the fact that the stun on the L2 can last just long enough for a guaranteed follow-up attack if you land it at the right time. There are all sorts of true combos that you might not even realize exist. On a heavy thrusting sword, landing a jump heavy attack will guarantee you a follow-up light attack. On a crouch poke with a Colossal Sword, you can true combo it into Catch Flame, opening up the door for a really cool Strength Faith build. I could honestly go on forever with the minutia of dueling that just doesn't exist in PvE. A sneaky hard swap from Beast Roar Lance to Storm Stomp Lance won't phase Malekith, but in PvP it can leave your opponent confused and on the back foot. Of course you can take on a boss with any variety of build too, but to me the thrill is a little hollow since the boss doesn't care whatsoever what build you're using. If you spend time crafting a creative build and take it to Main Academy Gate, I guarantee you it's super satisfying to put to the test against real people. The community itself is basically a whole nother reason to play all on its own. Everyone involved wants the best for the game and its future, and it's honestly just really fun to be part of the discussion. A creator by the name of Amir and several others put together a PvP survey, as well as an extensive blog that's being presented to FromSoft that addresses many of the current issues with PvP. Not only does it address the issues, but it also offers solutions that could very well be implemented one day. If a dialogue between the PvP player base and FromSoft can be opened, then there's no better time to get into PvP. It's almost inevitable that they will add a proper queue and duel arena one day, so get ahead of the curve now and hone your skills for when the time comes. There are thousands upon thousands of people that are passionate about PvP and believe in its potential, we just have to make it obvious. The last thing I'll touch on is the ever-present player-to-player connection in FromSoft games that can make for pretty touchy connections at times. It's true that the occasional match can be nearly unplayably latent or rubber bandy, and in the case that that does happen, just sever the match and pick up a new sign, and chances are it'll be perfectly fine next. If you're in the US and summon someone from Australia, or just someone with very poor internet, the fight probably won't look too great, but I'm being honest when I say the vast majority of matches are more than playable. I'll throw the TLDR back up on screen for anyone that skipped through, or if you just want to recap anyways, here it is. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you were someone that was on the fence about getting into PvP and I was able to persuade you, all the better. If you already love dueling, then I encourage you to send this video to some of your stubborn friends. Subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.